I'll make it right again, but it's no use, you said. And my hunger grows and grows. I have to write the meaning of my life, or else everything's in vain. When the glory tries to tempt you, it may seem like what you need. But if glory makes you happy, why are you so broken up? So tell me how it felt when you walked on the water. Did you get your wish? Floating to the surface quicker than you sank. I know. So tell me how it felt when you walked on the water. Did you get your wish? Floating to the surface quicker than you sank. I know. Don't say you lose just yet. Get up and move ahead, and not only for yourself.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are having a great day and a wonderful week so far. Welcome, of course, to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam, gaming, Gunpla, and more. I'm your host, Stephen Bayless, aka Midnight Hatter, and joining me as always, the Gundam explainer, Blue Gamer, Adam Blue. How are you, man?
Doing good. I'm just glad we're at a point now where we can talk about Gundam versus Zeta Gundam because ever since I've known you,
Right.
you've always we're huge gamers, and you've always said that's your favorite game, and I've always meant to get around to it.
I've
Yeah,
been
I just
banging that
started.
drum for a long time. So
Yeah, no, just started it recently. Love it, so I'm glad that that's something we could jive with for sure.
yeah, and so that's really what I wanna talk about tonight. So tonight's definitely gonna be like a show in 2 halves where basically I wanna talk about Gundam versus Zeta Gundam. I wanna get your impressions of it. I wanna share your impressions of it, obviously because everyone knows what I think of the game.
Yeah,
Um, and also it's a huge inspiration for the game that I'm working on. So I'll be showing off some of the progress that we've made here, some of the changes that I've implemented since the last time we showcased this because, some things were brought to my attention that maybe we could improve and iterate on this game that I hadn't thought of. So I'm excited to share that stuff with you. And yeah, it's just a great time, and we were having such a blast, in the green room, so to speak, just
I
talking
know.
about things that weren't Gundam related, that was
Or
like,
content
"Okay, now we
creation.
gotta, like, reset."
Yeah, I know. That was fun. We got to continue that sometime.
For sure. Um, but yeah, so I believe when you told me that you had started playing Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, and it was on your stream, Tuesday, correct? Like, on the
Yep.
Gundam Explained channel?
Yeah.
So, I believe the exact quote you said to me was that it holds up, and, like, I know it holds up, but I wanna hear what you think about the game that holds up because that I think that there's a lot to be learned from older classic games, especially ones prior to the, a lot of the quality of life type updates that we've gotten in the last 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
things like right stick controlled cameras. Like one of the biggest hurdles, I think, for new gamers playing old video games that are in 3D is that you can't control the camera, right?
Yeah, I know exactly. Or if they added that, it was super interesting, like, how Nintendo went the route of having, like, a C stick, but also had the up, down, left, right yellow buttons. I think we
Yeah.
forget that. North, south, east, west yellow buttons. You know how that was kind of an interesting.
Well, that was how you would control the camera in GoldenEye,
Yeah,
right? Like
and
you would have to use the
well, is it Latika, the cloud dude? Lakuta? I don't know. The cloud
Oh yeah.
dude in Mario 64, it's like when you first played the N64, you played Mario, and it was like use the buttons to control Lakita.
Yeah,
I'm close, but
which is
and then,
it's so cool that they, like, characterized the camera, like, they made him a cameraman following Mario around.
right, and I want to hold on to that idea. You know how sometimes I talk about how controls can be a little more interesting, and I think that's one way to do it. And I feel like the Gundam Zit versus Zeta Gundam does it too.
Yeah, so tell me about, your experience playing that game because like I said, I'm a huge fan of the older Gundam Versus style games. What was your impression hopping into it and, like, really giving it a go the first time?
Well, before playing it, a lot of different Gundam games I've played, but it's been the Versus series, not only Versus, but Maxi Boost. I guess those are the only ones. And those are refined versions of what we get now, or they are refined versions of what we got from games that were not fighting games, right? It reminds me of Doom, where you make the first person shooter, it's a fun game, and then someone's like, well, what if you could fight each other? And I think that's kind of what
Yeah.
happened with the because did it start with Federation versus Xeon, and then it went
That was the first Versus game, was
okay.
Federation versus Xeon.
Because so then you could see that they really came out just like, how could we have cool mecha controls? And then it kind of turned into a fighting game, which fighting games are known for having interesting controls. So I feel like at some point, video games were too much adopting a standardization we've talked about instead of being a little more interesting with the control type. So playing it, I love that it controls like that because then I feel like I'm playing another game, but also it's just responsive. If I'm turning left, turning right, whether that was intentional or unintentional, there's so many games from the mid 2000s that still feel clunky. But even though this plays slower than the modern fighting games, it still feels very smooth. Um, and again, with the controls, each button is a different thing, even a different weapon. It's not like you just switch your weapon and then there's just the fire. It's like there's different things there. And the other thing is the options for how to play, because even though the missions are really short and I'm now a gamer that prefers like bigger areas to longer term missions, there's a lot there, a lot of variety, and you can quickly get to what you want. I think that's another thing it does easy. You start arcade versus the Universal Century Campaign, whatever it's called. You get in there, and then you pick a mission, you beat it, and then there's other things. Then there's multiple things you can choose from. So you can get into a game fast with a bunch of different things to do. The controls are still very responsive, and while it might be the emulator I'm using, the graphics look great. So if I was to say if it was like lower res, which I would assume, it still has a lot of detail and color um in the game. So what is then your recollection? I don't know the last time you played it, but what's your like recollection of am I on point to what
I would
you
say
think?
so, and surprisingly, there's a lot of I'm glad that you brought up the variety of gameplay styles because it reminds me of, like, a good fighting game, let me put it that way, because there's a lot of fighting games where, I think to some of, like, the Dragon Ball Z series fighting games where a lot of the move sets are basically the same, um,
Oh,
but fighting games like, I would say Street Fighter, uh Mortal Kombat, not so much because, again, everyone has an uppercut, everyone has a jump kick, like, everyone kinda has the same move set. They just have different fatalities, right? But, like, Street
yeah.
Fighter and, like, Super Smash Brothers, those are 2 games that have they're fighting games and are like, Smash Brothers is like a group fighting game that have unique character abilities that are specific to and they really affect the way that you control the character. And in that same vein, Gundam versus Zeta Gundam in particular, because of, like, the addition of funnels and, the remote weapons, the transforming mobile suits, because Federation versus Xeon didn't have that stuff. It had aquatic mobile suits and it had, like, the basic stuff. And so everything kind of played the same, but there were a couple of small details. Gundam versus Zeta Gundam in particular had such a wide variety of attack styles and, like you said, weapons that were different. What immediately comes to mind is something like the Zeta Gundam when equipped with the Hyper Mega Launcher, which again is something kind of I think that that was probably the first Gundam game that you could pick the weapon that your mobile suit was equipped with, because usually it was just like,
Oh,
you get the
whatever
loadout, like, that's
standard
it.
loadout, yeah.
You get the standard loadout. So the fact that you could pick, what weapon are you gonna take into battle? So the Zeta Gundam, when equipped with the Hyper Mega Launcher, what's interesting about the Hyper Mega Launcher compared to the beam rifle is that wherever you are in space, it's going to stop you and then turn you towards what you're targeted at and fire. And so you could do these kind of cool aerial acrobatic tricks where you would be boosting and then like, if someone was trying to lead you and shoot ahead of you in order to hit you, you could hit the hyper mega launcher and stop, turn, fire. Like, so it's this ability to manipulate space and control the arena in a way that is just unique to that game. And
Like
that's become
physics.
kind of a staple of the Versus series is, like, a lot of the aerial juggling and, like, basically anyone who can stay in the air the longest is the winner in Maxi Boost as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, you bring up a good point because and it's funny, I was saying earlier, like, if they did it on purpose or not, sometimes I feel like a gameplay system could be introduced that is ahead of its time, and, like, I feel like, yeah, the combat and the shooting, not that it's ahead of its time, but I don't think it or maybe we just didn't realize. I mean, I didn't play the game when it came out, but if I did, I would be super impressed, just because it's like Half-Life, 2. When they came out with Half-Life 2, it had the Source engine, so it had that physics system, and while I don't go
yeah.
back and play that game ever, that physics system and we see physics systems all the time, I still remember how much fun I had messing around with that physics system, so surprised, yeah,
And
so
that was, like, the foundation of the kind of games that are really popular now is, like, games where you can create your own fun because they basically hand you a system to play with,
yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
physics
system.
system or it's a way that elements interact with each other where it's like, okay, if you have fire and you use it on a wood thing, it's going to burn it, that's not a that's a relatively new development in video games, I feel like, and, especially in that PS2 era, a lot of it had to be done manually, like, you think about, like, Metal Gear Solid 2, all of the physics of, like, the bottles breaking and things when you shoot at them, like, that was all, like, manually programmed. There weren't, like they didn't have physics engines back then that would do these things for you. So a lot of the things that we take for granted now during that PS2 era were painstaking, details that
Yeah.
were added to the games.
Yeah,
Um,
so I have recently played 2 other Gundam games. One I reviewed for the channel, it was the One Year War, Japanese
that was
only.
a Japan o yeah.
Yeah, and then I've been playing the UC Climax, which is another one, and both of them are it's funny how similar they are. But the difference between Gundam versus Zeta Gundam or, the versus games, it's like you said, they've introduced a system to you that you can dive into, whereas these other games are more of like making a shooting gallery, eh,
Mhm.
instead of necessarily a system. It's like, sure, there's systems within the levels to tell the story and shoot and move around, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is to tell the story again of Amuro and all that, whereas
Right.
that's what's even crazier about Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam. Not only are they allowing you to tell the story from different angles, but also um, with not only good combat. I forgot this too. The music, because
Oh, fantastic.
that was one thing. It was like my video was getting blocked because of the music because they're using this music from
From
um
the show, yeah.
yeah,
And it had slightly destructible environments. Some of the buildings you could actually shoot down, which was very, that was, like, a valuable thing when you're in the Psycho Gundam levels, because when you're playing in Hong Kong, you have a lot of skyscrapers, and if you
yeah,
hide behind the skyscrapers, you can avoid some of, like, the scattering beam cannons from the Psycho Gundam, so there's stuff like that too that was pretty unique in which I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, the modern Gundam Versus and, like, the Maxi Boost On and those ones, like, they don't have destructible environments the same way. Um, they
yeah.
they
Unless
really
you
have
do
just have, like,
cosmetic, yeah.
stages.
Yeah, exactly. Because the layouts are purposeful for the fighting game fanatics to know what they're doing. Which
Exactly, they leaned into that, like, fighting game aspect and less of the which is, I can understand why they did that, but for me, Gundam versus Zeta Gundam and that early Versus series really evoked what I think is like a true Gundam play style because like you said, it's a little slower paced, it's not as fast paced, but it's not quite as slow as something like GBO2, which
Right.
is very
Exactly.
bulky and heavy, but, like, one of the things that I've always loved, and I talk about this all the time, is the animation run cycle for the Zaku 1 when you're playing, like, the old Gundam Versus games. The way that the Zaku 1 runs and, like, the shoulder armor and the skirt armor, like, bounce when
Yeah.
it's running, it gives it this sense of weight that is I don't even think you get that sense of weight from GBO2, honestly. Um,
No, it's all in the animation of in terms of the speed. So it's really
right,
just the
just
speed, yeah.
lurching around and,
Yeah.
like which, I
You
mean,
know
that's cool, but
yeah. Well, you got me thinking because it's just so insane to think how I missed out on playing a lot of good Gundam games, knowing that they existed because I had played, Rise from the Ashes, like, and I love that. It was one of my favorite Dreamcast games, not knowing it was Gundam. And then so I was just looking up stuff that came out in 2004 since that's around that era of Federation for Xeon and Gundam for Zeta Gundam, and we had, like, Fable came out, and I know
yeah,
that's one that you like. So during that
love
time,
Fable.
I think there was a lot of cool new mechanics into this gameplay systems because Half-Life 2 came out then, Halo 2, Doom 3, it was all about the new lighting, and all that. Oh, World of Warcraft. Yeah, that's a very interesting Metal Gear Solid 3 came out that year,
Man,
Knights of the
it's a
Old
peak
Republic
gaming.
2, Far Cry, which so
I
it's
think
an
if
interesting
you
time.
narrowed it down, it's like 1998 was like one, renaissance of gaming because you had Metal Gear Solid, you had Resident Evil 2, you had,
Mm,
Ocarina of Time. Like, '98 was a huge year for
yeah,
gaming.
yeah,
2004 sounds to me like the second renaissance because you had these
yeah.
I mean, a lot of them you've described are sequels to stuff, but they also are, like, genre-defining titles.
Yeah, whether it's mechanics they're introducing, and I was looking at, yeah, games that came out in 2003. Knights of the Old Republic, which I know a lot of people love that. The, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think, or maybe we're missing it today. I don't know because I do play a lot of games, but, like, there's not too many games doing different mechanics within similar systems. You either get games that they're all very similar or one-offs that are, like, completely different, but I think Crimson Desert's one of the first in a while to have a similar gameplay structure, but the systems are played a little different. The mechanics of the systems are different.
Yeah, I think this is actually something you talked about, on Blue Gamer this morning was, like, how proud,
Oh, what
the
was that?
was it the director of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts
Nuts and
was
bolts?
that Tears
Yeah.
of the Kingdom kind of borrowed the creation system and implemented it. And that goes to what you were saying is it's like I think that in those early aughts, you had games where you would take an established franchise and you would incorporate a new gameplay mechanic. So, like, a
Yeah.
perfect example of this was Majora's Mask to Ocarina of Time, is it's like Ocarina of Time was this great 3D adventure title, and the way that they iterated on it was not to just repeat the same thing, it was to create a game using the same system, the same engine, the same character, the same everything, but they introduced this new mechanic well, they actually introduced 2 mechanics if you think about it, because one of them is the time loop aspect,
Yeah.
so the ability to return to the start of the 3-day cycle and replay it, and so then you
Yeah.
had this ability to kind of experience events over and over again, which spoiler alert, that ties into the stuff that, Adam and I were talking about prior
Oh,
to
yeah,
the
that's
show.
right. Oh, wow.
Is
I love it.
cyclical time travel, but,
Yeah.
also the mask ability, so the ability to actually
Yeah.
change Link's form outside of just being either an adult or a child. So you had these 2 really cool mechanics that were introduced into the mainline title, and then it was and it had mixed reception at the time. I think a lot of people didn't quite understand it. I think obviously now in the age
Yeah.
of YouTube video essays, more people appreciate Majora's Mask as this wonderful work of art, which it should have
Okay, I
gotten
was gonna
credit
ask,
for.
what do you think about Majora's Mask?
I loved Majora's Mask. I remember because and you probably kind of had the same experience. Like I have two brothers, one older, one younger, and we did everything together. So it was like if we played a game, we experienced the story together. We would hand off the control every time someone would die. That was how we did our thing. In fact, it got to the point where even my brother-in-law, so my sister's husband, um, for a long time while I was in high school, he had actually been laid off from a job. He was living with me and my parents and stuff. And so every day from high school, I would come home and he would be there, and we would hop on Halo and play Legendary together, like, go through the campaign mode. Like, these are some of my most near and dear memories, are playing video games with my brothers, and
Yeah,
not just my blood brothers, but my brother-in-law. We
yeah.
would play these games together. It got to the point even that we would be playing games, and, like, when my brother-in-law would be going to bed, he'd be like, "Hey, alright, guys, turn it off. Like, I don't wanna miss any of the story, so, like, y'all are done." He's like, "I'm done, so y'all are done." Like,
That's, that because you're all in it together.
we're all
Yeah,
in it together, and that's
yeah,
something that I don't think modern, it's something that I don't think any generation after us has really experienced, like, that type of shared video game narrative that you play through together, even if it's a single player game. Like, that's the part that's crazy, is it's like,
yeah.
so the reason I bring all this up is that my older brother, my younger brother, and I, we would all play Majora's Mask together, and it was like my older brother would be the one to get us through the hard parts. I'd be trying to like navigate and map and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, Cafe, like,
Oh,
we have to get
wow.
Cafe's mask, and so like Anju is going to be here at 3 p.m. on day two, so like we need to do this, this, and this. And my little brother was just there for the fights. He was like, all right, can I fight the Stalfos or whatever? Cool.
That's
Um, it,
that's
it was
cool.
just like there's nothing quite like that anymore.
Yeah.
I get a little teary and nostalgic thinking about it.
No,
So,
dude, I gotta share you my like, so it's cool that you bring that up because I do think making games, gameplay into an experience, it's almost like you're, what's it you're honoring what you're about to do, like, instead of just kinda sitting down like, "I'm just gonna play something," it's kinda good to be intentional, and that's an example of intentional experience, and, I remember for me, I remember I was working at a movie theater at the time, and
yeah,
I had just I forget, me and a girl had just split, and she was already, like, dating another guy, and I was walking out of Walmart after my shift, I went to Walmart, bought I remember it was what was that, I forgot what game it was, but anyway, I get home or no, I'm leaving and I see her and him, like well, I think I might have had Majora's Mask because when I went home, I was like, "Just play
it's
Majora's Mask."
devastated.
Yeah, don't think about anything, just play, Majora's Mask and get me through it all, and, um but I do remember, though, thinking how different the game was, and I didn't like the time mechanic, but I didn't see it as a reason to hate the game. I almost saw it as, "Well, this is the challenge. This is the new Zelda challenge. I gotta, figure it out," So that's interesting. I love how we both had our experiences playing that game.
Yeah, dude, and honestly, like, that's kind of what the change from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom has been, right? Like, a lot of the
Yeah.
people who were in love with Breath of the Wild, who really came into the franchise with Breath of the Wild, they play through Tears of the Kingdom and they're like, "What? This is like, what do you mean I don't have the Sheikah Slate anymore? Like, what are these what's this weird
For
Ultra
me
Hand power?"
No, for me, it was, because I got to the first dungeon. I wanna beat Tears of the Kingdom, I do, because I like everything else except for I don't like the focus on the building stuff,
There is a
because
heavy focus on building.
I like that. I've done that in a lot of other games. So it's like when I'm playing Zelda, it's like that but at the same time, it goes back to the Majora's Mask thing. It's like, I know that this
Mhm.
is the iteration of that entry, the Breath of the Wild. This isn't supposed to be the next, you know, really, like
Exactly.
a Majora's Mask, and so it's like I want to experience it because I love everything else about it. That it has the whole underground area, um, the
Right. It you
the
you take the recipe that made Breath of the Wild, and then you layer these other mechanics on top of it, like the building and like the three-tiered, environment.
yeah, yeah. It's I got to get back to that.
Yeah, it's funny, it's like, man, the second like, the closest thing I've gotten to that experience of, like, playing video games with my brothers was when my wife was pregnant with our first, and we went out to Target and we bought it was when we bought our Switch, and we bought the Switch and we bought Breath of the Wild, and so, like, for, 3, 4 weeks, like, leading up to the birth of my first daughter, it was like that was what we did together, like, it's this, like, amazing memory of, like, going out at, 9 at night and going to, like, like, it was just on a whim, we were like, "You know what? Like, let's get a new video game system, let's buy Breath of the Wild, like, I hear it's good," kinda thing, and even my wife will tell you is, like, that's, like, aside from obviously having our kids, that's, like, the best experience that she and I have ever had together, being
Wow,
married, so,
that is really
like,
cool.
I
Yeah,
do think that this is one of those underrated things about video games that people don't understand. I I get that things like Fortnite and Call of Duty and World of Warcraft have created this, culture around gaming of, like, "Oh, you're just, like, this lonely gamer down in your basement," but it's like, there's a different side to video games that
yeah,
I think is kind of, I'd like to bring it back, honestly, like, I want more couch co-op, I want more games that you want to experience with other people and not just for content, not just like,
right.
"Oh, I'm gonna stream myself playing this game for the first time. Oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah,
I want real experiences. I want to bond with family and friends um, that are here that I can touch. So I don't know. It's just that's my weird sentimental rant for the evening.
no, no,
Um,
that's great, man. I really to I think you've brought up a really good way to think about games. You know, being intentional about it, having really cool experiences with people that you're gonna look back on. So
yeah, and
nice
and
one, man.
for me, Gundam versus Zeta Gundam is one of those games because obviously, I've gone into like the menus and I've seen the time that I put into it. It's like
Yeah,
22,000 hours. Like I've literally spent like 2 years of my life playing
that
this
is
game
amazing.
because it's
But hey, it
crazy.
makes sense considering when it came out. Like, I can
Yeah.
see based on when it came out, like, it yeah. I mean, recreating those moments, the music, you know.
Exactly, and it's like there's the completionist aspect to it because and I'll never forget, when I was playing and, like, my save game, I was like, "Okay, I'm playing through Universal Century mode," and I'm like, "Alright, 98%," and I beat the last mission, and it goes 102%, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And so then I keep playing and I unlock another timeline and I unlock another timeline, I unlock another timeline. I'm like, wait, what is going on here? And so then I get to 300% of like 300% completion. Like it
That
was
is
the
so
wildest
300.
experience. 300. That's the
That's
max.
damn.
So
Wait, how was that it didn't take 22,000 hours to get to that.
no, no. Like I,
Okay.
I think I hit that like, obviously,
Like 40
man,
hours?
2 decades ago. Yeah, I think that it doesn't take long once you figure out what unlocks other timelines in the
Oh,
Universal Century mode, because I think the first one that I unlocked was when I was able to beat Buran before he kills, Roberto. And then that unlocked the
oh.
timeline that's like Roberto lives, and I was like, "Wait a second. So you mean to tell me that every mission where a character dies, if you play it right, you can unlock the timeline where they don't die?" And so then that was like, "Okay, so I'm gonna go to the New York mission in Gundam, and I'm gonna stop Garma from dying, and then that unlocked the Garma tree, and it was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to this mission and stop Ramba Ral
Wow.
from dying." It's like so once you figure out, like, the system, you can start gaming it, but, like, I didn't know that that was a thing until, I finished the game, and I was like, "Oh, that was fun. Wait a
It's
second, what does
amazing.
102% mean?" Like
That's so cool. Yeah, I cannot wait to play it more. Like I was actually just playing it as when we first started the stream, so I can like be fresh on talking about it. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. No,
it's
I'm
become
so
this
glad that
show.
you've gotten to play it and, like, you're getting to appreciate what I like about the game because I think that the gameplay itself is particularly dialed in for a game of that time.
Dude, you're on point about this stuff a lot. Like even with Metal Gear Solid 5, it's like I played it, I know it, but you're like, no, look, you play these games, Adam. Look at it a little deeper. And yeah, definitely
But Metal Gear Solid 5 is a little different because I can understand why Sniper Elite and Helldivers are more popular than or I don't wanna say more popular, but, like, I can understand why they would be more enjoyable to play than Metal Gear Solid 5
yeah,
because Metal Gear Solid 5 has all of the Kojima-isms that make it
exactly.
unenjoyable. Long cutscenes, like,
Yep.
you've got this convoluted story going on when you're just trying to interact with the world and play with the systems where,
You're
it's
so on
kinda
point.
like yeah, like Far Cry games are fantastic because even though they have this story that you're playing through, you really get to play with the game more than
Yeah.
play through the game, if that makes sense.
That's a really good example series. Have you played through much of those?
I think the last one I played was Far Cry 3, honestly.
Same here. Same here, and I liked it. I mean, I've seen the others and dabbled but 3 was the last one, well, then Blood Dragon. I don't know if you remember that? Did
Yeah, I
the one
remember
with
that. Honestly, I feel like I gotta go play the one with Michael Mando now because of the Gundam movie.
well, yeah, there's that, but then the one with Michael Biehn is Blood Dragon.
Yeah,
Di
oh, yeah.
It was like the whole neon synthwave, dude,
That's
and
pretty cool.
the song it played in the credits, and it's not like I can ever prove this, but as I was beating the game, I was like, "Oh, it'd be so amazing if the credit song was this song," and it was. And it's a song from this '80s re-release movie called Miami what is it called? Miami Connection or something like that. It's like a kung fu movie they brought back, and it had very, like, '80s stuff in it, and it became a meme, and,
That's hilarious.
so Blood Dragon, it's a short game. You could beat it in a couple hours. It's
Oh,
like
man.
it's like a side game, so yeah.
That's something that I wish that they'd bring back are, like, some of these, like, just kind of mini side games that aren't quite like
Yeah, that was a thing for a little bit. Yeah, where they weren't really about the main game necessarily, or it took yeah, Ubisoft is really good at that. You know,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I
Well,
mean, all of that is oh, go ahead.
and I was like, well, I don't wanna keep us from the badass stuff that's coming up. 'Cause, yeah, I know you said this is a two-parter.
Yeah, yeah. So if you guys are ready, we can hop into Unity. I'll show you guys what I've been working on. Again, there's a lot of things that I not only have tried to incorporate based on feedback that I've gotten, but since I do have this love of Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, one of my goals was to actually create mech combat that felt like that wasn't slow and clunky like a mech warrior game or like GBO2, but to make it, you know, like not zippy and fast like an Armored Core game because I feel like that's not like there's it's that sweet spot in the middle for me. Is like it's
Gundam
got to
for
be
Zeta Gundam.
deliberate. Yeah,
I mean, it really is.
exactly.
It does a good job, yeah.
So yeah, let me hop into the screen share here and I'll walk you guys through some of these changes that I've made. Again, really excited to share this stuff with you. So, the first obvious big example here is we actually have the Vaelo here in scene. I went with this unique, well, I don't want to say unique, but I tried to kind of create this cell shaded effect using a drop in shader. Um, And, obviously, I don't want to create any issues where shader compilation becomes an issue, but I kind of like the way that it looks a little bit more like an anime. It kind of reminds me of another PS2 game was the Robotech Battle Cry game, which was
Oh,
like
yeah.
super cell shaded.
Yep.
Um, and so, yeah, I think that I got this pretty cool effect going on where it's like you have a couple of like duotones, and then there's almost like an outline that looks sketchy. So
Yeah.
it does look kind of like a hand drawn effect. But let me know what you guys think, and we'll see. It is all like it's not pre-rendered, so it's all using the scene lighting. So when I fire up the scene, you're actually gonna see it's like the sometimes like characters will turn completely black if there's enough shadow. So one of the things that I'll have to be a lot like much more deliberate about than I've been so far is creating scene lighting that is that is reflective of that. Um, so yeah, let's kind of just walk through this. Let me fire up the test demo
Cool.
here, and I'll show you guys some of these features that we've incorporated. So here we have our character. She runs, she jumps, her hair has a little bit of that hair bounce to it. I probably need to do a little bit more weight painting to make it so that her hair is a little bit less like blocky um as it animates. And again, that's using a free plugin for Unity called Easy Softbone. It's one of the things that I'm actually going to be using on the mechs themselves for the skirts and for the like pauldrons because it allows them to be kind of loose and free physics. But you also have hard surface versions of the physics. So even though Easy Softbone is designed to be used for like cloth and hair, you have the ability to make it to where it's like hard surfaces as well.
It
Obviously, we
is
incorporated all the
a little bit laggy, um,
oh, no.
but I
I
don't
wonder
know
if
if
it's
that's
just
just yeah, how because I know
let me close
before
out a few things and see
yeah,
if that
it's okay,
makes a difference. So first,
yeah.
I'll pause this. I did have Gundam versus Zeta Gundam pulled up here. So let me quit here.
Nice.
I'm also going to quit my VS Code here so that it's just Unity running. We'll
Okay.
uh see if that improves it at all. Um, and if not, actually, you know what? I have a pretty good idea here. Let me try something here. I am just going to bring up my control room. I'm just going to reduce the resolution of this tab to 40, and it's going to look a little funny here for a second.
That's cool. Yeah, the reflections on the water look tight. That's cool.
All right. So let's see if this improves our rendering at all. Um, you guys will have to let me know. Oh, okay. Got our player. All right, let's fire this up again. Shader compilation. We'll make it full screen. All right. How's this looking to you guys? Still a little laggy?
It is a little better though, like, at sometimes it is, I mean, we can get it, at least I can
Okay.
from my view in Video Ninja. Yeah, it
Okay. So again, we've got our aiming and strafing camera. This is going to be for like targeted aiming. That's your left trigger type deal.
oh, yeah.
Um, we've got a crouch, which reduces our speed, makes us crouch and do all that good stuff. We've got our sprint, so we can sprint across. So, but here is the really exciting stuff is you come up here, you tap the interact button, and now the camera pans up and we've got our
Oh,
mecha
that's cool.
controls.
Right on time because it got pretty smooth as you were walking up to load in.
Oh, good.
So, yeah. So it looks good now. That's that's cool, man.
Now, here is one of the things that I'm most excited about, and this was inspired heavily by the, like, anime trailer that I showed last week, right?
Yeah.
Um, what I decided to do was create a terrain-based, animation system for the mecha because I thought it was cool the way that the mechs would, like, zip around and were kind of boosting on the ground on the lunar surfaces and the asteroid surfaces, and so I was thinking to myself, "How could I implement that where you have the running, right? Obviously, you have this running animation, but the ground over here is tagged as 0G. And so then all of a
Oh,
sudden, you have the mech boosts around and is not running.
yeah.
So it's totally based on the raycast that happens when we are checking if the mech is grounded. Now, I kinda wanna improve this animation because it kinda looks goofy. The fact that it's like his arms keep
Oh,
moving, but his legs are frozen. So
yeah.
I think we could definitely improve the animation. I just need to create a couple of animations for, like, the legs boosting around and stuff. But I really think it's cool that when the terrain changes, you get a different animation for movement, for, like, that 0G kind of speedy
Yeah.
movement. And then, of course, we have the ability to get out of our mech if oh, she got stuck in the foot there for a second. And this is what I was talking about when it comes to, like, the lighting, because because the shader is completely lighting based, if the light isn't shining on you, then, like, you get, like, a total
Oh,
silhouette. So I'm gonna have to be much more deliberate about light placement if we go for this cell shaded approach. Um
yeah, that's interesting. Man, but yeah, that's so cool how far along this is because it's like still work in progress, but we're just seeing all the things, like it's not
Right,
just
it's kind of, like, iterative and,
yeah.
just kind of showing off each feature as it becomes implemented. Um, Now the next thing, and again, this goes back to some of the feedback that I've gotten, um, and like I said, so if you look at the, ground, obviously the ground has been, baked as like, an AI walkable terrain, and, like, these sections of ground are untagged, whereas the sections of ground, on the other side are tagged as 0G, and that's what allows the mech to recognize that, like, this is a place to boost around on versus this is a place to walk on, so that's pretty cool. Additionally, let's see, what are the other interesting things? So obviously we've got our different cameras. One is for the player, one is for the mech, and all of the interaction happens in script there. The next thing that I wanted to implement, and this was part of the feedback that I got, was some people don't want to play as my weird anime protagonist Kalen, and I get that. And so one of the things that I think was interesting, a change that occurred that BioWare made from Knights of the Old Republic to Mass Effect, was they made it so you can't switch characters anymore. In Knights of the Old Republic, you played as you know Darth Revan, essentially, but in gameplay, you could switch characters and you could play as the wingmen, so to speak. Um, and so a way to elegantly do that, I thought, would be to use scriptable objects, because that's kind of what we're gonna be doing for the mechs anyway.
Mm,
So, this mech object is currently it's just defaulted to the Vaelo, but the idea is this mech pilotable script is actually going to have more information attached to it. It's going to have what the mech's armor is, how fast it moves, which character model to use. Um, and so one of the things that's, you know, important to remember about Unity is you have like a couple of different script types. One of them is the mono behavior. So a mono behavior essentially is a script that does things. It either reads inputs or it creates actions on screen. A scriptable object is like a container for data. And so the most obvious use that people use scriptable objects for is when you have weapon systems where you can equip different weapons, because you have the scriptable object weapon that contains how much damage the weapon does, what um
Mm,
what prefab, what like model to load when the weapon loads, what animation to play when you fire the weapon, things like that. And so basically, I'm extending that to the characters and the mechs as well. And so the idea is, instead of the player being this fixed object, we are going to have a reference here in the player control script that is, what is the or what is the character scriptable object that's going to be attached to the player, and then it will load that model, and that model will come with its own health, its own speed, its own attack values, its own defense values. So it's going to make it so that you have different playable characters with um different abilities. And I think
yeah,
that that's going to add that extra layer of, you don't have to play as the main character.
yeah. And I've enjoyed. I remember I didn't like that before because I felt like, oh, then my story is not focused. It's not, contained. But Portrait of Ruin, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin did that, back in the mid 2000s, where
Right.
you could switch between the two protagonists. One was magic, one was more m- melee. I mean, it was essentially the same thing, but you could then use each other to do moves and stuff. And then even getting into the Xenoblade games, and that's just a bunch of characters, and you could choose them if you want, and different ones. And it's like it is kind of neat to expand that into gameplay systems, mechanics. Yeah.
I think that that's definitely a way to go about it, and, isn't that kind of like what they tried to do with Assassin's Creed Shadows, where it was like you could switch
Yeah,
between
but
Yasuke and
okay, so I played that, and you were Yasuke for a little bit at the beginning, like the intro, and then you were the girl Naoi or no, Nio I forget.
Naori? I don't know.
Yeah, and then that just went on for a long time, and I kinda just got bored, and it never came to a part where I could switch. So, I think that's the missing, at least for me, the fact that that didn't happen until later or something. I wasn't as
Yeah, I
interested.
think that if you're gonna have a system like that, you have to make it like, either you have the ability to switch when you want to, or you switch at like pretty frequent regular intervals. Because
Yeah,
I mean, even some of the Resident Evil games where you have like a sequence where you have to play as like, where you play as Ada, or you play as
yeah,
Sherry in like Resident Evil 2, you would not want to do that for like an extended period.
yeah.
And then even in Resident Evil 3, I'll be honest, like, the playing as Carlos part is like, it's cool for a little bit, but then it really does drag on. Like,
Dude,
I was like, "Can I just go back to playing as Jill? This is."
so I need to play 3, I never played 3. But
Oh, really?
yeah, but I will say, the Spider-Man 2 game is so bad at that, that I haven't played. I'll play it and then I'm like, "Oh, I'm at a walking part," or I was a part where I was like
Walking.
Mary yeah, or a part where I was like Mary Jane doing stealth. Like, I did not buy a Spider-Man game to be a woman doing stealth in a but, just a re what is she, a reporter? What was she in? Well, maybe in this, she had some sort of job, and she would get involved with stuff, and it's I don't that was a weird game. I did not
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely one of those games that, like, you can tell that the player experience came distant third to whatever
yeah.
else they were trying to push, because, like, yeah.
It didn't even sell well when they released it on PC. Isn't that interesting? You would think that it would, but it was just the PlayStation marketing thing. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what it is. Yeah, that's interesting.
They did push that game pretty hard on PlayStation. I think it was predominantly to get people to buy PS5s, right? Like,
Yeah, maybe, yeah, that was all yeah, all, that was, huh, interesting.
um but yeah, I mean, one now that we've got, like, the foundations of a lot of this stuff one of the first things that I'm going to need to do is start to refactor some of these things because many of the player controls are like the player control script has basically gotten way too bloated because it
No.
contains basically everything, which is not good. And it's definitely not going to work if we decide to um refactor and try to allow for character swapping because a lot of this stuff is baked in. So one of the first things that I am going to do before we make any huge improvements is like all of the camera switching and stuff. Like all of the camera management is going to go to its own script. That is going to be the camera manager, so to speak. All of the stuff that's associated with just moving the player is going to go to its own script. What's interesting, and this is kind of the blueprint, is the mech controls just simply as a result of having to be able to board the mech in runtime. And this is part of the thing that's like what could make Gundam versus Zeta Gundam better would be being able to get out of the mobile suit and like go
Yeah.
grab another mobile suit, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's part of what I'm doing here. And so it's like I wanted to have mechs that were available for you to go pick up and pilot. And of course, like I want to have the ability to, you know, Metal Gear Solid 5 style call in like, hey, I need the Vaelo dropped in and like, you're gonna have the Avengers gonna drop the mech onto the map for you to go get. So that's part of it is having that flexibility. So, in order to do that, obviously, all of the mech controls have to live on the mech game object apart from what the player is doing. We can't have all of that stuff baked into the player because it has to control the mech. So we have this mech controller script, and essentially, all the player controller does is it just passes inputs from the player object onto the mech, which is it's exactly what we want. So if we scroll down here, again, this has gotten way too bloated. It's one of the reasons that this needs to be basically converted into a input manager script as opposed to a player control script. And then we're going to have a character control script that the input handler is going to push inputs to. And then we've got our mech control script, which obviously is going to change depending on which mech you're piloting, and it's going to push inputs to that. So if we scroll down all the way to the bottom where I started building this out, basically we've got our mech controls down here. And this is where we would create new things to interact with our mechs. I did the thing again. I started typing on the wrong keyboard.
No.
Can you imagine how bad the lagging would be if I were trying to run Unity and OBS on the same computer?
Oh, yeah.
um, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna create. I'm gonna show you guys just like how easy it is to create um, these interactive features. So I'm going to create this public method called mech jump. And all we're going to do is we're going to grab our current mech object. We're going to hit dot jump. And I think that that's all we need for it. Let me just double check. So if I go into the mech controller script, because I've already created the actual actions, essentially I copied them from the player actions into the mech actions here. Um, I don't think I need to pass a variable in for jump. Yep, here it is. So we have this public method. So we've exposed the method as public in the mech controller script, which is why we are able to call it from the player control script. And when we board the mech, if we go up here on enter mech, we set the active mech to the mech object that you interact with. We set is piloting to true. We do all of the onboarding changes, but then here it is. Current mech, we get the component, we get that script, we get that mech controller script from the active mech, and we say anything that I want to do, I have to run it through this current mech is our variable to interact with it. So basically, I'm just grabbing that public method from the mech controller script from this one, but that's not all we have to do to hook it up. Just to show you guys. So that created it, but before we are able to actually interact with it, we have to go into our player inputs, we go to events, we look up our mech action map, and here you see we've got this jump control. We're just going to add something to it. We're going to drag our player onto it. And then from the player control script, we are going to select this. You see where it says mech jump right below the regular jump. And that is going to it's kind of crazy how this all strings together. It's like one script telling another script to tell another script to tell another script to do something. So we've got our player actions, we've got our mech, we've got the jump, which is space bar or button south. When that is called, we go to our player script and we call the mech jump method, which essentially just calls the jump method on whatever the active mech controller is, which would be the one that's attached to the mech. Which is a very long-winded way of saying we just added a jump to our mech.
Well,
So let's see if this works. We're going to board. And if I'm guessing correctly, I don't think that I've created enough jump force to actually get the mech to jump. So I'm going to hit the space bar, and I don't think it's going to move.
oh,
Wow, okay. So
yeah,
he actually does have enough juice.
okay.
So that
Dang, there
simple
you
as
go.
that, linking these things in. And honestly, I think the next step would be because we want the mech jump to behave slightly different than the character jump. We don't want him to just jump straight up. We want him to be able to like boost the way that you do in Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, where the longer
Yep,
you hold it down, maybe we have a thrust gauge that decreases over time, and
yep, yep.
that would be the way to go. Um, and of course, like we're gonna do some fun stuff with it in the future as well, because I mean, let's face it. I mean,
I mean, already getting this far, looking like this, it's like you could just sit here for fun and jump around in your own mech. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, you have already made your own mech as your own playable game.
and that's the goal, right? We're trying to all right, let's see if this works because I've loaded in all of these animations that we're probably going to use going forward. So just to wrap up the stream, I want to hopefully show off some of these things. Um so these
Oh,
swordplay animations that the Vaelo is going to be able to execute. Let's see. Oh, whoa, what happened here? So this is an attack animation. Again, like the tune shading is kind of messing it up because it's all black and it doesn't have like you can't see. That's kind of like a low cut.
oh,
And
I
again,
see.
these were all free animations that I picked up from the Unity Asset Store. That like I was like, okay, let's do some cool sword attacks. That so we've got a
Yeah.
sword thrust. These feel a little bit fast to me. I might be inclined to make them like half
Oh,
speed,
yeah. That's cool.
just to kind of really sell the giant mech
Yeah.
because they feel a little bit too speedy. Oh, let's bring that back. See what this looks like. See,
Oh,
that's a
that,
nice little 3-hit combo.
yep.
But that's the next phase of the development, of course, is to start
Yeah.
adding in the whole combat system and tying this whole thing together. So, changing out all of the characters and mechs and weapons so that they are scriptable objects. refactoring the code so that everything is isolated in its own script instead of being all compiled into one massive player controller script. And then, of course, introducing the combat system because we already have the
That's fun.
AI. We already have not only do we have the enemy AI, but the NPC AI is the same script as the enemy AI. They just behave differently. Like they use the same sensory information from the scene, which is cool.
Wow. Yeah, man, it's really cool to see this process and just kinda like, I mean, if someone's following along with this, you know, I mean, there's ways to, yeah, get a game started, not really have to spend wow, didn't
Oh,
expect that.
bless you.
Yeah, and not really spend too much money. I mean, because 'cause you're really just trying to get by, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm using only free tools, and obviously, like, a lot of what I do is AI assisted, I call it, because, even though Claude has been a huge help with the code base and, like, optimizing things, a lot of it is stuff that I've had to know and had to understand how it interacts in the first place.
yep.
So, like, one of the biggest examples of that is that Claude, when I asked it to create that transition from, walking to hovering, it did. It did a great job of that. However, what I wanted it to do was to keep the ground check because obviously when you're doing a ground check for, a video
Mhm.
game in Unity, it's like you use a raycast, and if the raycast hits something below their feet, you're on the ground. Well, what it did was it got rid of that and then did just the check, whether it was 0G or
Hmm,
like regular terrain. And so I was like, well, now he's just flying everywhere because you got rid of the ground check. Like you
yeah,
turned the ground check into a terrain check and like didn't replace what was missing. So I was like, I had to go back in and manually add that back in. But it's like these are things
yeah.
that have sped up my progress, but I don't think that I could have done it 100% out of AI.
Yeah, yeah, I know, it's really just helping you get to a certain spot quicker, you know? It really, yeah,
Exactly.
if you know
And
the
that's
stuff,
why I
yeah.
encourage people, man, just go build it. Just go do it.
Yeah, I agree. It is fun. So much stuff.
Oh, well, I've held you guys up long enough. Thank you guys for indulging me on that. Thank you guys for hanging out and talking about my
Yeah.
favorite PS2 game of all time. Adam, as always, thank you for your input. I'm so glad that you've gotten to play Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, and I hope that you will be the first test pilot for Vaelo Protocol once it
Oh,
hits it.
heck yeah.
Um, but in the meantime, uh, thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely check in on the Gundam Explained show tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And until next time, we'll catch you later.
See y'all.